There is an animal on this planet that can kill a trained hunter with one swipe, and its entire diet is ants. That is not a movie. That actually happened. Brazil, 2010. And that is just one of the 10 creatures we are covering today. Most wildlife videos show you lions, tigers, sharks. The same stuff you have seen 1,000 times. This one is different. Today, we are going through 10 animals that the vast majority of humans will never see in their lifetime. Not because they are extinct, not because they are microscopic, but because they live in places most people will never go. They move in ways that physics says should not be possible. And honestly, some of them look so bizarre that scientists themselves spent years arguing about whether they were even real. A snake with no wings that is actively being studied by aerospace engineers. An animal that uses its own rear end as a weapon and produces the only cube-shaped droppings in all of nature. And a creature that appeared in ancient murals for thousands of years. And every historian just assumed it was a myth, until it was not. Picture this. It is midnight in the rainforests of Madagascar. You've got a flashlight, dense canopy blocking out every star, and the kind of silence that somehow feels louder than noise. You are maybe 60 feet down a trail when something moves between the trees. It is not loud. It is fast, built low to the ground like a cougar, but moves like a cat, but is not a cat. It stops, looks directly at you, and then it is gone, like it was never there. You do not know what you just saw. That is exactly what the first Western explorers described when they encountered the Fossa. The apex predator of an island that has been completely cut off from the rest of the world for 160 million years. An animal that evolved entirely on its own, by its own rules, with no competition from lions or wolves or anything else we consider dangerous. Just it, at the top, alone. Every single creature on this list solved a problem that human science is still trying to catch up to. The flying snake taught aerospace engineers something about lift that no wind tunnel had ever figured out. The wombat, yes, the chubby little Australian wombat, is the reason physicists are rethinking how soft tissue can produce perfect geometric shapes. The desert tortoise has been surviving in temperatures that push past 110 degrees Fahrenheit, in conditions that would kill most living things within days, and it has been doing it for 150 years straight. These are not just weird animals. They are proof that nature has been running experiments for millions of years, and we are only now starting to read the results. By the end of this video, you will know why engineers at major research universities are studying a 3-foot snake from Southeast Asia. You will understand why the most dangerous animal on this list looks completely harmless. And you will never look at the Australian outback the same way again. You have lived on this planet your whole life. After today, you will realize you have only seen the surface of it. Let's get into it. Imagine an animal so well designed that predators have been trying to crack it open for millions of years. They still have not figured it out. That is the armadillo, and it is number 2 on our list today. We just talked about how strange this planet really is. How most people go their entire lives without seeing creatures that are living, breathing proof that nature operates on a completely different level than anything we learned in school. The armadillo is exactly that kind of creature. It looks like something an engineer designed in a lab, except nature built it first. Long before we had any concept of body armor, ballistics, or structural defense, this animal was already running around South America completely unbothered. Here's what you need to understand about the armadillo. It is the only mammal on Earth covered in a shell made of real bone. Not thick skin, not dense fur. Actual bony plates called osteoderms, fused together into a hard outer casing that wraps around its body like a suit of medieval armor. There are 21 known species of armadillo, and they range from tiny, about the size of your hand, all the way up to the giant armadillo, which can grow to nearly 4 feet long and weigh over 110 pounds. That outer shell is not just for show. Certain species of armadillo curl into a perfect ball, not roughly ball-shaped, a perfect, seamless, interlocking sphere of bone. Predators bite it, claw at it, roll it around. Nothing gets in. The animal inside is just sitting there, completely calm, waiting for the threat to give up and walk away, which they always do. Now picture this. You are a jaguar. You have spent the last 20 minutes stalking something through the Brazilian bush. You finally close the distance. You pounce, and what you end up with in your jaws is essentially a rock that used to be moving. There's no angle. There's no weak point. There's nowhere to bite that does any damage at all. So you sit there frustrated, and eventually you just leave. That is the armadillo's entire strategy. Not speed, not venom, not size, just absolute total architectural patience. And while it is busy being impossible to kill, it is also doing something remarkable for the ecosystem around it. A single adult armadillo eats roughly 200 pounds of harmful insects every year. Termites, beetles, grubs, fire ants. It roots through the soil with its long snout, digs fast with powerful claws, and methodically works through entire patches of ground, clearing out pest populations that would otherwise damage crops and destroy root systems. Farmers in South America have complicated feelings about armadillos because they dig up yards and fields, but the insect control they provide is worth more than the holes they leave behind. Here is the lesson. The armadillo does not try to be the fastest animal in the jungle. It does not try to be the strongest or the most aggressive. It simply made itself impossible to destroy, and then went about its life completely unbothered by everything else around it. In a world that constantly rewards speed and aggression, the armadillo won by becoming a problem that nobody wanted to deal with. There's something quietly powerful about that. But surviving by being impossible to crack open is one strategy. The next animal on our list chose a completely different approach. It decided to become so physically imposing, so visually overwhelming, that most predators will not even attempt an attack. Except looks can be deceiving. Because up close, this creature is hiding something far more dangerous than its size suggests. And in 2010, a hunter in Brazil found that out the hard way. In 2010, an experienced hunter in the Brazilian state of Minas Gerais went into the wild and did not come back. The animal that killed him weighed less than 100 pounds and eats nothing but insects. That animal is the giant anteater. We just watched the armadillo win every fight by refusing to engage. Pure passive defense. The giant anteater is the opposite story. It looks slow, it looks gentle, it looks like absolutely nothing about it should concern you. And that is exactly why people make fatal mistakes around it. Here's what you are actually looking at when you see a giant anteater for the first time. The body can stretch over 6 feet long from nose to tail. The tail alone is enormous, bushy, and thick enough that from a distance, the animal genuinely appears to have 2 heads. First-time observers consistently describe the same reaction. They cannot figure out which end is the front. That confusion is not trivial. It means that by the time you figure out where the danger is, you are already too close. The giant anteater lives primarily in Central and South America, ranging from grasslands to tropical forests. It has no teeth. Its jaw is essentially fused shut into a long, narrow tube, designed for one single purpose, which is pushing a 2-foot-long sticky tongue into termite mounds, up to 160 times per minute. One giant anteater will consume roughly 35,000 ants and termites. It does not stay at any one mound long enough to let the colony fully mobilize against it. It hits fast, pulls out, moves to the next one. Efficient, calculated, almost surgical. But that tongue and that jaw are not what you need to worry about. Picture this. You are standing in a clearing in the Brazilian Cerrado. The grass is dry and pale yellow. The heat is sitting around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. About 40 feet ahead of you, something large and dark is moving slowly through the brush, nose down, completely focused on the ground. You figure it is harmless. Every instinct you have says this animal is not a threat. It is not looking at you. It is not making any sound. It is just eating. So you get closer. What you do not see, because you are focused on that bizarre long face, is the front legs. Specifically, the claws. Each front claw on a giant anteater curves inwards so sharply that the animal actually walks on its knuckles to keep him off the ground. The same way a gorilla walks, because the claws are too long and too curved to lay flat. Those claws can reach 4 inches in length. The muscle system driving them can generate enough force to tear open a concrete hard termite mound that would take a grown man with a pickaxe several minutes to crack. In 2010, that same force was applied to a human being during a confrontation in Minas Gerais. The hunter was killed. A second fatal attack was recorded in the same region just a few years later. In both cases, witnesses described the same thing. The anteater did not chase anyone. It did not hunt anyone. It simply stood its ground. And when the person got too close, it reared up on its hind legs, spread those front claws wide, and swung. One swing. Here is the lesson. The giant anteater is not aggressive. Every biologist who studies this animal will tell you the same thing. It is actually one of the more timid large mammals in South America. It does not want conflict. It does not go looking for trouble. But it has spent millions of years developing tools for breaking through the hardest natural structures on Earth. And when it feels cornered, those same tools get used on whatever is in front of it. The most dangerous version of anything is not the thing that wants to hurt you. It is the thing that simply has the capability, and finally runs out of options. Now that if you showed a picture of this animal to 100 people and asked them to identify it, you would get maybe 3 different answers: wolf, fox, some kind of deer. Every single one of them would be wrong. That is the maned wolf, and it might be the most misunderstood animal on this entire list. We just spent time with the giant anteater, an animal that fools you with gentleness and then surprises you with capability. The maned wolf fools you in a completely different way. It does not surprise you with danger. It surprises you with the fact that everything you assumed about it, based entirely on how it looks, is completely incorrect. And that says a lot more about how human perception works than it does about the animal itself. Here's what you need to know about the maned wolf. It is the largest wild canid in South America. Its legs alone can reach nearly 3 feet in height, giving it a total standing height of about 3 feet at the shoulder, which makes it look like someone took a red fox and stretched it vertically until it was the size of a small horse. The body length runs around 4 feet. It weighs between 44 and 51 pounds. From a distance, in low light, it moves through tall grass like a ghost, and the silhouette it casts looks like nothing else on Earth. Its face is unmistakably fox-like: narrow snout, large pointed ears, amber eyes. But the legs are too long for a fox. The body is too large for a fox. And the mane, a ridge of dark fur running along the back of the neck that raises when the animal feels threatened, is something no fox has ever had. Its name includes the word wolf, but it is not a wolf either. The maned wolf is not closely related to wolves, foxes, dogs, or any other canid you would recognize. It sits alone in its own genus, Chrysocyon, which translates directly to golden dog. It is the only species in that genus. There is nothing else like it anywhere on Earth. Picture this. You are a researcher doing fieldwork in the Brazilian Cerrado at dusk. The light is going flat and orange. The grass around you is nearly 4 feet tall, and you have been sitting quietly in the same spot for 2 hours, waiting for something to happen. Then you see it. A pair of legs, impossibly long and dark, moving through the grass, about 60 feet away. The body above them is rust red, almost glowing in the fading light. It moves with this slow, deliberate, high-stepping gait, like it is carefully placing each foot. It stops, raises its head. Those enormous ears rotate independently, scanning for sound. Your first instinct is wolf. Your second instinct is fox. Your brain keeps cycling between the two, because it cannot reconcile the legs with the face, with the size, with the movement. Nothing in your mental catalog fits. That is the maned wolf, built by evolution to fill a very specific ecological role in a very specific landscape, with no interest whatsoever in matching the categories that humans invented for other animals. And here's what makes it even more surprising. Despite the predator silhouette, despite the wolf name, despite the fox face, over 50% of the maned wolf's diet is fruit. Specifically, it has a near-obsessive relationship with a fruit called the wolf apple, known locally as lobera, which grows across the Cerrado year-round. The maned wolf eats it constantly. It also disperses the seeds across enormous distances through its droppings, making it one of the most important seed dispersal agents in the entire South American ecosystem. This animal, that looks like a predator, is in a very real ecological sense, a gardener. Here's the lesson. Every assumption you made about the maned wolf the moment you saw it was built entirely on pattern recognition. Long legs, pointed face, canid body shape. Your brain rammed through its catalog, found the closest match and labeled it. Wolf, fox, predator, dangerous. All of it wrong. The maned wolf is a reminder that the categories we use to understand the world were built by us. For us, based on limited information. Nature did not consult those categories when it built this animal. It just built what worked. And what worked turned out to be something that breaks every label we try to put on it. The most interesting things in the world rarely fit the boxes we prepared for them. Now the maned wolf breaks your assumptions about what an animal is supposed to be. But the next creature on our list breaks your assumptions about where an animal is supposed to live. Because the next one chose the desert. Not a lush rainforest, not a river delta, a desert. And it has been thriving there completely alone for 150 years at a stretch. The question is not how it survives. The question is why everything else gave up, and it never did. There is an animal living in one of the hottest, driest places on the North American continent that has been doing so since before your great-great-grandparents were born. It does not have air conditioning, it does not have a water source, it just has itself. And apparently, that is enough. That animal is the desert tortoise. We just watched the maned wolf break every assumption about what an animal is supposed to look like. The desert tortoise breaks every assumption about where an animal is supposed to live. Because when you think of a turtle, you think of water. Rivers, ponds, swamps, ocean. Every instinct you have about this animal points toward moisture. And then you find one, slow and ancient and completely unbothered, walking across cracked earth in 110-degree Fahrenheit heat, with no water in sight for miles in any direction. Here is what you need to understand about the Mojave Desert. This is not a mild, dry landscape. Summer temperatures in the Mojave regularly push past 115 degrees Fahrenheit at ground level. The soil surface itself can reach 150 degrees Fahrenheit on a clear afternoon. Rainfall averages between 2 and 5 inches per year across most of the range. There are stretches of the Mojave where it does not rain for over a year at a time. Most reptiles in this environment survive by being small, fast, and spending the majority of their lives underground. The desert tortoise is none of those things. It grows to about 15 inches in length. It weighs between 8 and 15 pounds. Its dome shell is thick and heavily structured, more like a small boulder than anything aerodynamic. It moves at a pace that makes slow look generous. And it has been living in this environment, thriving in this environment, for hundreds of thousands of years, for somewhere between 15 and 20 million years, based on the fossil record. The desert tortoise lives primarily across the Mojave and Sonoran deserts of the American Southwest, covering parts of California, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. Individual tortoises can live up to 150 years. That means a desert tortoise alive today potentially watched the American Civil War happen, watched both world wars, watched the entire 20th century unfold, and is still out there somewhere, right now, moving slowly across the same landscape its ancestors crossed millions of years ago. So how does it actually survive? The desert tortoise stores water directly inside its body, in a large bladder that can hold enough fluid to sustain it through months of complete drought. When it does find water, even a small puddle left by a rare rainstorm, it drinks for a long time and stores everything it can. It gets additional moisture from the plants it eats, primarily desert grasses, wildflowers, and cacti plants. It spends up to 95% of its life underground, in burrows it digs itself, emerging only during the narrow windows of the year when temperatures are survivable at the surface. It does not fight the desert, it simply waits it out, over and over again, for 150 years. Picture this. You are driving through the Mojave on a late April morning. The temperature is already pushing 90 degrees Fahrenheit by 9 in the morning. The landscape on both sides of the road is flat, pale, and bone dry. Creosote bushes, scattered Joshua trees, nothing moving anywhere. You pull over for some reason, maybe to check your phone, and you walk maybe 20 feet off the road into the scrub. And there it is, a desert tortoise, about 12 inches long, moving at roughly the speed of a very slow walk, across ground that looks like it would crack your lips just standing on it. Its shell is dusty and worn smooth in places, marked by decades of contact with rock and soil. Its eyes are calm and ancient in a way that is hard to describe. It is not afraid of you. It barely registers you. It has been here longer than anything you have ever owned. Longer than the road you just drove in on. Longer than most things you could point to and call permanent. Slow and deliberate and completely certain of where it is going. Here is the lesson. The desert tortoise did not conquer the Mojave. It did not overpower it or outsmart it or find some clever shortcut around the heat and the drought. It simply outlasted everything else. It slowed down when everything else sped up. It stored what it needed and let go of what it did not. It kept its head down and kept moving to conditions that were genuinely trying to kill it every single day. There is no flashier version of this lesson. Endurance is not exciting to watch. But the desert tortoise has been alive longer than any person you have ever met, in a place that most living things cannot survive for a single summer. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to stop. Now the desert tortoise survives by mastering one landscape completely and never leaving it. But the next animal on our list is the opposite. It is found only in one place on Earth, a single island. And on that island it became something that exists nowhere else in the world. It is the apex predator of an ecosystem that has been evolving in total isolation for over 160 million years. Most people have never heard its name, and the ones who have encountered it in the wild describe the experience the same way every time, like meeting something that should not exist. There is an animal on this planet that evolved completely alone for 160 million years, with no lions, no wolves, no leopards to compete with, and it became the most dangerous thing on its entire island, without any of those advantages. Nobody taught it how to hunt, nobody gave it a blueprint. It just figured it out entirely by itself over millions of years of total isolation. That animal is the fossa. We just spent time with the desert tortoise, an animal that survived by mastering patience in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. The fossa took a completely different path. It was handed an island, cut off from the rest of the world, with no instruction manual, and no competition from the large predators that dominate every other ecosystem on the planet. And what it built from that isolation is something that looks familiar enough to recognize, but is unlike anything else alive today. Here is what you need to understand about Madagascar first. Madagascar split from the African continent roughly 116 million years ago. At that point, whatever animals happened to be on that landmass were sealed off from everything else on Earth. No new predators arrived, no large cats swam over, no wolves migrated in. The animals already there simply kept evolving, completely undisturbed, for 160 million years. That is longer than the entire age of flowering plants. Longer than the existence of most bird species. Long enough for evolution to run completely separate experiments from everything happening on the rest of the planet. The result is an island where roughly 90% of the wildlife exists nowhere else on Earth. And sitting at the very top of that ecosystem is the fossa. The fossa belongs to the family Eucliridae, a group of carnivores found only in Madagascar. Its closest relatives are mongoose-like animals. But the fossa itself looks nothing like a mongoose. It looks like someone blended a cougar with a cat and stretched the result into something leaner and longer. Its body reaches up to 31 inches in length, not counting the tail, which adds another 28 inches, making the total length close to 5 feet from nose to tail tip. It weighs between 13 and 26 pounds. It moves through the forest canopy with the fluid, boneless ease of something that has been climbing trees for millions of years, which is exactly what it has been doing. The fossa hunts lemurs primarily. It pursues them through the treetops at speed, using semi-retractable claws and flexible ankles that allow it to descend trees headfirst, something almost no other predator its size can do. It is fast, precise, and completely silent in the forest. Researchers who study it in the field describe it as genuinely difficult to track, even with modern equipment. It moves like it knows you are there before you know it is. Picture this. It is 2 in the morning in the Massawa rainforest in northeastern Madagascar. You are a field researcher 3 weeks into a study on local lemur populations. You have a headlamp, a notebook, and a recording device. The forest around you is dense enough that your headlamp only illuminates about 15 feet in any direction. You hear the lemurs in the canopy above you go completely silent, not gradually, instantly. 1 second there's noise, movement, the constant chatter of a colony settling in for the night. The next second, there is nothing. Total silence across the entire section of canopy above you. You have been in the field long enough to know what that means. You sweep your headlamp slowly across the trees. Nothing. You hold still and listen. Nothing. Then, maybe 20 feet to your left, at eye level, you catch two amber eyes in the beam for exactly 1 second before they are gone. No sound, no rustle of leaves, no branch movement. Just two eyes, and then darkness where the eyes were. That is the Fossa, moving through its territory at night, on its own timeline, completely unbothered by your presence or your equipment, or the fact that you've been trying to find it for 3 weeks. Here is the lesson. The Fossa did not become the apex predator of Madagascar by being the biggest animal on the island. It is not that large by global predator standards. It did not win by brute force or intimidation. It won by being perfectly, specifically adapted to one place, over an enormous span of time, with total commitment to the environment it was born into. Most predators on Earth evolved in competition with other predators. They had to be better than lions, or faster than wolves, or more cunning than bears. The Fossa never had any of that pressure. It simply had to be the best version of itself, in the specific forest it lived in, against the specific prey available to it. And that turned out to be enough to sit alone at the top of an entire ecosystem. You do not always need to beat the best in the world. Sometimes you just need to be undeniably the best in your world. Now the Fossa ruled its island in total obscurity for millions of years, while the rest of the world had no idea it existed. But the next animal on our list had the opposite problem. It lived in one of the most explored regions on Earth, was seen by ancient civilizations, was painted onto temple walls and written about in historical records, and the entire scientific community still spent centuries convinced it was a myth. Until one morning in the early 1900s, a British officer walked into the Congo rainforest and came face to face with something that was supposed to be impossible. For thousands of years, one of the most unusual animals on Earth was hiding in plain sight, painted onto the walls of one of the most visited ancient structures in human history. Historians looked at it, studied it, cataloged it, and concluded it was a mythological creature. They were wrong. That animal is the Okapi. We just watched the Fossa rule an island in complete obscurity, unknown to the outside world for millions of years. The Okapi had the opposite experience. It was documented by ancient civilizations. It appeared in Egyptian hieroglyphics alongside real animals like lions and elephants and crocodiles. And still, for centuries, the entire Western scientific community looked at those paintings and decided the animal depicted simply could not be real. It took until the early 1900s for a British officer named Sir Harry Johnston to walk into the Congo rainforest and prove that one of the most bizarre-looking animals on Earth had been there all along, quietly existing, completely indifferent to whether anyone believed in it or not. Here's what you are actually looking at when you see an Okapi for the first time. The front half looks like a dark reddish-brown horse. The back half looks like a zebra, with sharp black and white horizontal stripes across the upper legs and hindquarters. The neck is long, but nowhere near giraffe length. The ears are enormous, almost comically large, and can rotate independently in opposite directions. The tongue is dark bluish-purple, nearly 18 inches long, and flexible enough to reach up and clean its own ears and eyelids. The Okapi stands about 5 feet tall at the shoulder. Its body length runs between 8 and 10 feet. It weighs between 440 and 770 pounds, and despite that size, it moves through the dense rainforest of the northeastern Congo with almost complete silence, which is one of the primary reasons it avoided Western scientific detection for so long. Because here is the thing. The Okapi is not actually rare in terms of population numbers within its habitat. It is rare in terms of being seen. It has an extraordinary sense of hearing through those massive ears, and at the first sound of anything unfamiliar, it simply disappears into the forest. Researchers with years of field experience in the Congo describe going entire expeditions without a single confirmed sighting. The animal is there. It simply chooses, consistently and effectively, not to be found. The Okapi is the only living relative of the giraffe. Despite the zebra stripes and the horse body, and the general visual chaos of its appearance, its closest living cousin is the tallest animal on Earth. The two species share a common ancestor that lived roughly 11 to 12 million years ago. Since then, they have gone in completely opposite directions. The giraffes stretching upward into open savanna, the Okapi compressing and adapting into the dense lowland rainforest of the Congo Basin, where a long neck would be a liability rather than an advantage. Picture this. You are Sir Harry Johnston. It is 1901. You are a British colonial officer in Uganda, and you have been hearing stories from local Congolese people for years about an animal they call the Okapi. They describe it with complete matter-of-fact certainty, the way you would describe a deer or a horse. It is simply an animal that lives in the forest. Everyone knows it. Everyone has seen it. But every European naturalist you have spoken to has dismissed the accounts. The description sounds like a confusion of multiple animals. Stripes like a zebra, body like a horse, tongue like a giraffe. It is obviously a legend, they say. Local mythology dressed up as zoology. Then one afternoon, your local guides bring you to a section of forest trail. And pressed into the mud, clear and unmistakable, are hoofprints unlike anything in any zoological catalog you have ever studied. Wide, deep, the stride pattern of something large and deliberate. You follow them. You never see the animal that day, but you collect enough physical evidence, skin samples obtained from local hunters, to send back to London. And when the specimens arrive at the Natural History Museum, the zoologists there go completely silent. It is real. It has always been real. It was in the paintings all along. Here is the lesson. The Okapi spent thousands of years being dismissed by people who considered themselves experts, people with access to the best scientific knowledge of their time, because its description did not match any existing category. It was too strange, too contradictory, too impossible looking to be taken seriously. And the entire time, it was just standing in the forest, eating leaves, raising its young and living its life at a scale of millions of animals across the Congo Basin. The lesson is not that experts are always wrong. The lesson is that the absence of a category is not the same as the absence of a thing. Just because something does not fit the existing framework does not mean it does not exist. Sometimes the framework is simply too small. Now the Okapi was real all along, and just needed someone willing to follow the tracks. But the next animal on our list does not leave tracks you can follow, because it travels through the air without wings, in a way that physicists and aerospace engineers have spent decades trying to fully explain. And the deeper they look into how it works, the more they realize that this 1-meter-long snake from the rainforests of Southeast Asia may hold answers to engineering problems that no wind tunnel has ever solved. There is a snake in the rainforests of Southeast Asia that has no wings, no fins, no gliding membrane of any kind, and it can travel through the air for distances up to 33 feet between trees, with better aerodynamic efficiency than most human-designed gliders. Aerospace engineers have been studying it for over 2 decades. They still do not fully understand how it works. That snake is the Chrysopelia, the flying snake. We just followed the Okapi through the Congo, an animal that was dismissed as myth for centuries, until someone finally followed the tracks and found it was real all along. The flying snake has a different problem entirely. Everyone knows it exists. It has been documented, filmed, studied extensively. The problem is that what it does should not be physically possible given its body structure. And the more precisely scientists measure it, the more confused they become about exactly how it pulls it off. Here is what you need to understand about how flight actually works. Every flying or gliding animal that science had cataloged before studying the flying snake uses some form of surface area to generate lift. Birds have wings. Flying squirrels have a membrane of skin stretched between their limbs. Flying fish have enlarged pectoral fins. The structural logic is consistent across every species. You need a surface. You need something for the air to push against. Without that surface, you fall. The flying snake has none of it. Its body is roughly 3 feet long and roughly the diameter of a human finger. It has no limbs, no membrane, no enlarged fins, no structural feature that should generate any meaningful lift whatsoever. And yet, it launches itself from branches up to 30 feet high, travels horizontally through the air for distances that far exceed what passive falling would produce, and lands with precision on target branches that it appeared to aim for before leaving the launch point. Here is what it actually does. Before launching, the flying snake climbs to the highest available branch and hangs in a J shape from the tip, assessing the distance to its target. Then it launches by thrusting its body upward and outward simultaneously, not simply falling forward. The moment it leaves the branch, it flattens its entire body by spreading its ribs outward and pulling its belly inward, transforming its circular cross-section into a concave, roughly triangular shape that runs the full length of its body. That shape generates lift the same way an airplane wing does, by creating a pressure differential between the top surface and the bottom surface. But here's where it gets strange. The snake does not just hold that shape and glide. It continuously undulates its entire body in a horizontal S-curve throughout the flight, shifting the wave pattern from nose to tail in a smooth, continuous motion. Researchers at Virginia Tech discovered in 2020 that this undulation is not random movement. It is a precisely controlled aerodynamic adjustment system that actively stabilizes the snake's flight path, the way an aircraft's control surfaces stabilize a plane in turbulence. Remove the undulation in computer models, and the simulated snake immediately becomes unstable and crashes. The movement is not incidental. It is the technology. It just evolved. Picture this. You are a physicist at Virginia Tech in 2010. You have set up high-speed cameras at multiple angles around a flight cage in your laboratory. A flying snake is sitting on a platform 12 feet above the ground. You have filmed this animal dozens of times already, and you have the footage. You know what it looks like. But today, you are running the computational fluid dynamics analysis on the airflow patterns around its body during flight. The numbers come back and you read them twice. The lift-to-drag ratio this animal is producing mid-flight, with nothing but its own body shape and a wave motion running down its spine, is comparable to the aerodynamic efficiency of early aircraft wing designs. A 3-foot-long snake with no wings is producing flight characteristics that took human engineers decades of wind tunnel research and mathematical modeling to achieve in metal and fabric. You sit back in your chair and stare at the screen for a long time. This animal has been doing this for millions of years. In the rainforest, with no engineers, no wind tunnels, no mathematics. Just evolution, running its own experiments, arriving at a solution that humans are only now beginning to understand well enough to copy. Here is the lesson. The flying snake did not set out to teach aerospace engineers anything. It was just trying to move between trees efficiently in a dense rainforest where ground travel is slow and dangerous. Evolution gave it a problem, limited resources, and a need to cover distance quickly. And over millions of generations, it arrived at a solution so elegant that the most sophisticated computational tools available to modern science are still working to fully reverse engineer it. The best solutions to hard problems are often already out there. They were just arrived at by a process that did not leave a patent trail. Nature has been running engineering experiments for 400 million years longer than humans have. We are not ahead of it. We are catching up to it. Now the flying snake moves through the air by turning its entire body into an aerodynamic surface. But the next animal on our list takes a completely different approach to the same problem of moving through a medium that was not designed for it. It lives in the ocean. It was built for the ocean. But when the ocean becomes the most dangerous place it can be, it does something that no fish should be able to do. And it does it fast enough and far enough to actually survive. Every fish on Earth evolved one primary defense against predators. Swim faster, swim deeper, hide in a reef, produce venom, inflate into a spike-covered ball. Every single solution stays in the water, except one. That fish is the flying fish, and it decided the ocean was not big enough to hide in. We just watched the flying snake solve an aerial problem with nothing but its own body and 400 million years of evolutionary pressure. The flying fish arrived at a similar solution from a completely different starting point. It did not start in the trees. It started at the bottom of the food chain in the open ocean, surrounded by predators on every side, with no reef to hide in and no venom to deploy. And the solution it arrived at was so counterintuitive so completely outside the logical framework of what a fish should be able to do, that the first European sailors who witnessed it wrote home describing what they thought were birds that lived in the sea. They were not entirely wrong. Here is what you need to understand about the open ocean surface layer. This is one of the most dangerous places on Earth for a small fish to exist. Below you, tuna, mahi-mahi, marlins, and swordfish are moving at speeds that can exceed 50 miles per hour. These are among the fastest large predators on the planet. And they are specifically adapted to hunt in the exact depth range where flying fish spend most of their time. Above you is open air and the occasional seabird. There is no cover, no shelter, nowhere to go. The flying fish evolved in this environment, and its solution was to make above you into a viable escape route. The flying fish is generally between 7 and 12 inches long. Its enlarged pectoral fins, when folded against its body, look like any other fish, but when spread, they extend outward like wings, with a surface area large enough relative to the fish's body weight to generate meaningful lift at sufficient speed. The lower lobe of the tail fin is significantly longer than the upper lobe, a design that allows the fish to keep the tail in the water, while the body is already partially above the surface, using the tail as a propeller to continue accelerating, even after it has broken through. Here is the sequence, as it actually happens. A predator closes in from below. The flying fish detects the pressure change in the water and immediately angles upward at full speed. It accelerates to roughly 35 miles per hour underwater in the final approach to the surface, a speed that took the entire evolutionary history of its fin structure to make possible. It breaks through the surface with enough velocity to become fully airborne, spreads both pectoral fins simultaneously, and is suddenly no longer a fish in any practical sense. It is a glider. Once airborne, it can travel up to 600 feet in a single glide, at heights of up to 4 feet above the surface. When it needs more distance, it dips its tail back into the water, beats it rapidly without landing, reaccelerates, and launches again. Multiple consecutive glides have been recorded, covering total distances of over 1,300 feet. Built for water and moving at 50 miles per hour, cannot follow. It simply watches the fish disappear into a medium it has no access to. A flying fish does not do this to be dramatic. It does this because it works. Picture this. You are on a research vessel in the tropical Pacific, about 300 miles offshore. It is early morning. The light is flat and silver, and the ocean surface is nearly calm. You are standing at the rail with coffee, not really looking at anything in particular. Then the water in front of the boat explodes. Not one fish, dozens, simultaneously bursting to the surface in every direction, fins snapping open, catching the morning light like silver flashes, gliding low and fast over the water, before vanishing back below the surface one by one. The whole thing lasts maybe 8 seconds. Then the ocean is flat and calm again, like nothing happened. What you just witnessed was a feeding event. Something large came up from below into the school, and every flying fish within range executed the same escape program simultaneously. Break surface, spread fins, get out of the water. Every individual fish making the same calculation in real time. The air above me, a medium I was not built for, is safer right now than the water I live in. And they were right. The flying fish did not grow wings. It repurposed what it already had, fins that existed for steering and balance underwater, and pushed them to a function they were not originally designed for. It did not become a bird. It became something that temporarily uses the same physics as a bird, in the specific moments when being a fish is going to get it killed. It is about recognizing when the environment you are built for has become the most dangerous place you can be, and having the capacity to operate, even briefly, in a completely different one. Sometimes the solution to a problem in your world is to temporarily leave your world entirely. Now the flying fish survives by escaping its environment, at the exact moment that environment tries to kill it. The last animal on our list does not escape anything. It does not run. It does not hide. It does not fly. It simply backs up, blocks the entrance with the hardest part of its body, and waits. And while it is sitting there, completely unbothered, it is also doing something that no other animal on Earth has ever been found to do. Something so geometrically precise that scientists spent years assuming it had to be a mistake. There is only one animal on Earth that produces cube-shaped droppings. Not roughly cube-shaped, not approximately square. Perfectly formed, consistent, geometric tubes. Scientists did not believe it at first. Then they measured them. Then they spent years trying to figure out how soft biological tissue produces a shape that humans require rigid molds and manufacturing equipment to replicate. That animal is the wombat. And it is the strangest conclusion to this list that nature could have possibly arranged. We just watched the flying fish escape death by temporarily abandoning the medium it was built for, using repurposed tools in ways evolution never originally intended. The wombat took the opposite philosophical approach. It looked at everything it was given: a round body, short legs, a burrowing lifestyle, an extraordinarily tough rear end, and a digestive system unlike anything else in the animal kingdom. And it built a survival strategy so specific, so perfectly suited to its environment, that it has been running unchanged for millions of years in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. Here is what most people get wrong about the wombat. They see it, and they think slow, harmless, a chubby Australian novelty animal that waddles around looking soft and approachable, and in normal circumstances, that assessment is mostly accurate. The wombat is a herbivore. It eats roots, grasses, and bark. It spends the majority of its life either underground or moving slowly across the Australian outback, looking for food. It weighs between 44 and 77 pounds. It is roughly 3 feet long. Its legs are short, and its body is round, and its face looks like something designed to be on a children's television program. But push a wombat into a corner, and the entire picture changes. The wombat can run at speeds up to 25 miles per hour in short bursts, which is faster than most humans can sprint. Its rear end is not soft tissue. It is a dense plate of cartilage and bone covered by extremely thick skin, a structure that functions essentially as a biological shield. When a predator, typically a dingo or a Tasmanian devil, chases a wombat into its burrow, the wombat does not panic. It runs in, positions itself just inside the entrance, and uses its rear end to block the opening completely. The predator cannot bite through it, cannot claw through it, cannot get past it. The wombat simply sits there, breathing normally, until the predator gives up and leaves. It turns its weakest-looking feature into its strongest defensive position. But the rear end is not even the most scientifically significant thing about the wombat. That distinction belongs to what comes out of it. A research paper published in the journal Soft Matter formally explained how the wombat produces cube-shaped feces. It is the only known case in all of biology where an internal soft tissue organ produces a geometric shape with flat sides and right-angle corners. The wombat's intestine has varying elastic properties along its length, with 2 distinct regions of differing stiffness that work together to compress and shape the waste material into consistent cubes as it moves through the final section of the digestive tract. The cubes measure roughly 3/4 of an inch on each side and are deposited in stacks of up to 100 at territorial marking sites. The reason for the cube shape is functional. Round droppings roll, tube-shaped droppings do not. They stay exactly where the wombat places them, on top of rocks and logs and elevated surfaces where they are most visible to other wombats as territorial markers. The wombat engineered, through millions of years of evolution, a dropping that does not move after placement. The geometry serves a purpose. It always does. Picture this. 2 in the morning in the Australian outback in South Australia. The temperature has dropped to 50 degrees Fahrenheit after a day that hit 102 degrees Fahrenheit. A wombat emerges from its burrow, sniffs the air for about 30 seconds, and begins moving across the red soil in the darkness. It covers maybe half a mile over the next 2 hours, grazing methodically, stopping every few minutes to listen. At several points it pauses at elevated rocks and deposits small stacks of cube-shaped droppings with a precision that looks almost intentional. Because it is intentional. This is territory management. This is communication. This is infrastructure. Around 4 in the morning, a dingo picks up the scent and begins following. The wombat detects it and does not panic. It moves at a controlled pace back toward its burrow. Not sprinting, not erratic, just purposeful. It reaches the entrance and goes in. The dingo follows to the entrance and stops. For the next 20 minutes, the dingo tries everything. Digging, biting, pawing, nothing works. The rear end blocking the entrance does not move, does not flinch, does not make a sound. It is simply there, immovable, like a plug designed specifically for this hole. Eventually the dingo walks away. The wombat stays in position for another 10 minutes. Then slowly turns around, moves back to the entrance, sniffs the air again, and goes back out to finish grazing. It doesn't celebrate. It doesn't rest. It just continues doing exactly what it was doing before, completely unbothered. Because this is not a crisis to the wombat. This is just Tuesday. The wombat is not the fastest animal in Australia. It is not the strongest. It is not the most venomous or the most aggressive or the most visually intimidating. It is a round, slow-moving herbivore that eats roots and sleeps underground. But it has been surviving in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth for over 25 million years, which is longer than most of the predators that currently try to hunt it have even existed as species. It survived not by being extraordinary in any single dramatic way. It survived by being perfectly, specifically, completely itself. Every feature, the thick rear end, the cube-shaped droppings, the burrow system, the methodical grazing pattern, fits together into a single, coherent survival strategy that has required almost no modification for millions of years, because it simply works. You do not need to be the most impressive thing in the room. You need to be the thing that is still there when everything else has moved on. And that is all 10. A snake that taught engineers how to build better aircraft. A fish that temporarily becomes a bird to survive. A turtle that has outlived entire civilizations by refusing to stop moving. A predator that ruled an island for 160 million years without anyone on the outside world knowing its name. And a round, quiet, cube-producing marsupial that has been winning every fight it has ever been in by sitting completely still and waiting. This planet is stranger than most people realize. More layered, more patient, more creative in its solutions than anything we have managed to build or design or imagine. Every one of these animals has been here longer than us. Every one of them solved problems we are still trying to understand. And every one of them is still out there right now, doing exactly what they have always done, on a planet that most of us have only seen the surface of. If that does not make you want to look a little closer at the world around you, I am not sure what will.